Political reporter Peter Hamby is on the scene. That's Copley Square. Peter, tell us what you're seeing.
Hey, Jake. Yeah, it's kind of haphazard right now. The police are trying to shut down various roads, but people are just kind of going around them to get wherever they need to go. But in the immediate vicinity where I am, I'm at the corner of Exeter and Commonwealth, which is just a few blocks north of Copley Square. The immediate blocks have been pretty handily cordoned off. You have a bunch of onlookers here. I'm looking at 1, 2, 3 fire trucks and a small horde of police officers and first responders. But yeah, there's lots of people milling around. I'm surrounded by more than a few people who are in tears. But it's kind of an odd scene. It's kind of hard to get a read on people's emotions right now because, as you know, after running a marathon, there's plenty of people who are lying on the ground. There's plenty of people who are happy. But there's lots of people walking around in complete disbelief. Everyone here is on their cell phone. I first heard about the explosion when I was over in Cambridge and ran across the Harvard Bridge to come over here. And in kind of a telling moment of how people get their news now, you saw lots of young people with ashen looks on their face, kind of staring at their phones, trying to make phone calls, not getting through. And then you saw a lot of older people just walking around not knowing what had happened in the immediate aftermath. But right now, Jake, right here, we have a small clutch of reporters and onlookers and just thousands and thousands of people milling around the back bay as ambulances and police cars come by.
And we were just told, Peter, that there will be a press conference by local authorities, including the Boston Fire Department, at 4:30 Eastern. That's just 14 minutes from now, to talk about what happened. We will bring you that live as it comes. I also, Peter, how big is the law enforcement presence where you are right now? As you know, often when there is an explosion in a situation like this, if it is a terrorist attack, the terrorists will take the occasion to do a secondary or tertiary attack once people have gathered, once first responders have gathered. Are there a lot of policemen there?
Right, that's exactly right, Jake. That's sort of the hallmark of those incidents. I am currently looking at, again, this is just down Exeter Street. I see about a dozen firefighters and 3 dozen police officers, and they're trying to keep as many people back as possible. Again, I talked to one police officer earlier, and I was trying to walk down Mass Ave to get over here, and he said, "You can't go this way." So I just walked around the block. I mean, there's so many people and so many streets and alleys to close off, Jake. And you have a lot of people who are walking away on foot. The streets are shut down, but you have a lot of people also walking toward the scene. And one more thing, I talked to an eyewitness a few minutes ago by the name of Ben. He wouldn't give his last name. He's a student at Tufts University. And his description of the explosion was that the size of the explosion, we heard earlier that it was probably the size of a 4-story building. This eyewitness said something similar, that was bigger than the grandstand at the finish line, the first explosion. He said it, quote, felt like a huge cannon, and then he said a second explosion came out of what he said looked like a trash can. Now, that's his description. I can't confirm that, but that's what he said. And he said they came very quickly, one after the other. The way he described it was boom, 2, 3, boom. So they came in pretty quick succession there, according to this one witness, Jake. All
right, Peter Hamby on the scene in Boston. If you're joining us, there were 2 explosions at the end of the Boston Marathon. The Boston police say that 28 individuals are wounded and 2 individuals have been killed in these explosions. We still do not know exactly what type of explosions they were, although Vice President Joe Biden did refer to them as a bombing. I want to bring in CNN's national security analyst, Peter Bergen. Peter, does this, obviously, we don't want to speculate, we don't know what this was, but is there reason for people who deal in counterterrorism to think that this is an act of terrorism, or suspect it strongly at least?
Sure, although I'm reminded of Oklahoma City, which was a bombing, which was initially treated as a gas explosion, so first reports are often erroneous. Right. But, the fact that there were 2 explosions, 2 bombings, one of the things I'd be looking at is, once the device, if it is a device, is found, is what kind of explosives were used. So, for instance, if it was hydrogen peroxide, this is sort of a signature of Al-Qaeda. If it was more conventional explosives, which are much harder to get hold of now, that might be some other kind of right-wing extremist. And We've seen a number of failed bombing attempts by al-Qaeda using bombs. Najib al-Azazi and, for instance, Manhattan subway in 2009, Faisal Shirzad in Times Square in 2010, the attempt to bring down the Northwest Flight 253 over Detroit in 2009. But we've also seen other extremist groups, right-wing groups, attacking, for instance, trying to attack the Martin Luther King parade in Oregon in 2010. So if it is a device of some kind, you know, we should leap to conclusions about where it's coming from in terms of a political persuasion, and the kind of device will indicate, I think, if it has any links to al-Qaeda. It is much more likely to be a hydrogen peroxide bomb than other kinds of bombs. Basically, the reason for that is hydrogen peroxide is relatively easy to accumulate, whereas, let's say, if you go out and you buy something for a fertilizer bomb, you're going to attract a lot of law enforcement attention at this point.